the Mary Lou Wilson Revocable Living Trust?
I am.
And was that your mom?
Yes.
Okay. And that trust holds land in Woodbury County, is that right?
It does.
And you are aware that you caused to be filed what's known as pre-filed testimony, question and answer format in this matter, is that correct?
Yes.
And then you've also filed a subsequent hearing exhibit?
I did.
And if we were to walk through all of the questions in your pre-filed testimony, would the answers you would give here today be substantially similar, other than perhaps any minor clerical errors?
It would be, along with one correction.
Okay, please, what's the correction?
The additional filing that was made yesterday was an updated survey that we had done on that property.
All right, and just briefly, what's the material or the relevance of you wanting to update that, the material purpose of that update or change?
So, my mom just recently passed away, and we need to do an updated survey because of the land with the house and the farmland. Part of that farmland was pasture, and we had to update that.
Okay, and Exhibit 625 is that updated and corrected survey, is that correct?
Correct.
All right, we would offer Landowner Exhibit 419, 420, 421, and 625.
Are there objections?
Provided that's the pre-filed testimony attachments as well as 625 filed yesterday, there are no objections.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Seeing no objections, the board will admit and give the weight to.
Thank you. And ma'am, now I'm going to tender you for cross-examination of other parties. Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Taylor.
Thank you. I'm Wally Taylor. I represent the Sierra Club.
Hey, Wally.
I'm sorry to hear about your mother. Was she the owner before she passed away?
Yes, she was.
Okay. Was she dealing with the summit representatives, or were you all the way along?
I was doing that.
Okay.
On the contact report, it said that there were people that visited with her in person, and that's not true at all.
They never did?
No, not with my mom. She wasn't able to meet with them. She was going through chemo.
Okay. So tell us about the first contact you had with any summit representatives.
My initial contacts were with Tanner in, I think it was November 2021. And that's when I received the first easement.
Okay. Did you talk with him personally, or did he just drop off the easement or send it to you, or what?
He emailed it to me. A lot of that was emailed because I live north of Sioux Falls, so I wasn't in the area on a day-to-day basis. But we did have phone conversations.
Okay. And so when you got that first easement, what did you do?
Reviewing the easement and just didn't understand it, even after going to the Sioux City informational meeting. Wasn't happy with the questions and answers. All that Mr. Powell said was profit, profit, profit. There was nothing about safety or concerns with the landowners or the nearby neighbors or anything.
So explain that to me a little more. Mr. Powell said what?
He was always talking about the word profit, how we're getting money, and how the company's going to be profiting off of this, and it was not anything for us.
And that was at the informational meeting?
Yes, it was at the Sioux City one.
So did you and or your mother talk to a land agent right after that informational meeting?
I stopped just to make sure that they had my address, but nothing was done with that until I received a phone call from Tanner.
So after you got that first easement, looked at it, did you have any follow-up conversations with summit agents?
Very little conversation, I should say, because we just didn't have any interest in it. And then in January is when I retained Mr. Jody as our lawyer.
Do you know whether Summit did a survey on the property?
Oh, yes. My brother even caught them on the property saying they were surveying the neighbors, and they weren't. They were on our property, surveying our property. The gentleman said they moved the line. I don't even know where they moved the line from the first time to the second time. I have no idea.
Okay, so you're talking about the route of the pipeline?
Correct.
Okay, can we bring up the KMZ file? Does this show your property in the red?
Yes.
And it looks like the pipeline goes diagonally down through perhaps the south half of your property. Is that a fair statement?
Correct.
Is that the route that you always thought was the route, or had it changed?
That's the route that I tried to piece together, the three different parcels, because they had one labeled 150, one was 151 and 152. Nothing was put together, so it was hard to see. And I was unable to open any KMZ maps to see it as one straight line.
Okay. Did you ever talk with any land agent about a different route?
No, the only time I did an alternate was through my pre-filed testimony, which I don't believe we can actually even offer that with some additional information I've received about we have two main northern natural gas lines that run through.
Where are they approximately?
The one main line runs pretty much parallel there, and then another one goes up north of that.
Okay, so just to clarify for the record, the one natural gas line is very, very close to the proposed summit line and basically parallel with the summit line?
Right, it's, from the map that I have, it runs parallel here, and then it turns and jogs this way, and it's coming close to some oak trees.
Okay. And then, so what is the significance, if any, of those gas lines being there?
In talking to two northern natural gas line representatives, they had indicated that they have the blanket easement that was signed back in 1939. And part of this would be Summit would have to propose or submit their plans to their engineering department because they cannot be within 100 feet of the natural gas lines. Or if they were to go under it or cross it, that would be another situation that they would have to talk to them about and have it reviewed and see if it would be approved on a case-by-case basis.
Did you ever talk to any Summit representatives about the existence of those natural gas lines and the possible conflict?
No, this was recent knowledge that I'd received from Northern Natural.
Okay.
But they are aware of the Northern Natural gas lines because they had that listed on the Exhibit H, is it?
Okay, so you got the Exhibit H notice that listed those other easements.
Yeah, they did have those on there, and they also added Black Hills Energy on there because there is a line, there's like a tap out there.
So what does Black Hills have?
They have what is it? They have a line that goes straight down to the house, and it's actually for this property over here because he doesn't like going out there to manually read the meter. He had a meter installed on his house, which I don't blame him because going through that when the corn's there, it's really tall and it's easily lost because it's so far off of the road. When I was little, my dad would give me a stick with an orange bike flag and have me walk out to read the meter so he could see where I was and direct me.
Okay.
So,
So just again to clarify the record, in the south portion of your property is south of the proposed summit route. Is that a residence or some sort of buildings there?
right here is the house that my mom lived in. Sorry. And then we have I don't know what my brother calls it, like a pop-up type unit building. And we have like a barn and a tax shed there, but there's also going to be a building here. I mean, this red line is not, according to the new map, not the right one because it's going to be extended out a little bit so it can accommodate that building.
What would those red lines be?
That is the previous lot lines, I guess you could say.
Oh, okay.
Can you indicate which direction those lines will extend?
Sorry.
It's okay. You're fine.
From the east is the driveway and it comes out, but it's actually going to go up just a little bit here on the northeast side of there.
Okay, so that northeast corner of that farmstead, you're anticipating it extending further northeast?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So it'll be just a little bit for that. And then it's actually, when you follow the red line up towards that pipeline, then it's going to cut off right here on that new plat. Because this used to be pasture, it was the house with 8 acres. But our tenant turned that over to be cropland about 4 years ago.
Okay. Do you have any idea how close the house in that farmstead would be from the pipeline route?
From what I understand, it's 410 feet.
Okay.
And then we have a well that's right behind. There's the house, a detached garage, and there's a well right behind the garage.
Sort of like on the north edge of that farmstead? Or just north of the house, let's say.
Yeah, just north of the house, just right there at the end of that drive right there. So.
Okay. It's a hard question to ask, but do you think anybody will be living in the house where your mother was in the near future?
Yes, my brother.
Okay.
And I know my brother has been approached. I think it was Jim Murphy, and he told Jim that he was not able to talk to him because I was the point person for this, for the Summit pipeline.
And Mr. Murphy is a Summit land agent?
Correct.
Okay. When was that your brother was contacted?
I believe that was like April 22
Of this year?
last year.
Okay.
And with the survey question, we've had them on there, we've told Mr. Murphy. I mean, I emailed Summit on May 16th of 2022 that there's not to be surveys. I keep telling people, even Oscar. And the next day they send out a certified about 10-day survey notice.
Okay. But as far as you know, they've never surveyed?
According to Justin Dozier from DDSI, that was surveying in June of 22, he said that they were out there, someone was out there and surveyed it on May 2nd of 22.
Okay.
And then there was an archaeological dig that was supposed to happen too, and we only knew about that because the utility people were out flagging the lines, so they knew. And I called Rachel at Margent and told her as well.
So was there an archaeological dig?
I have no idea.
Oh, okay.
They said they'd have somebody call me, but nobody did.
Okay. You didn't see any evidence of it?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. If I've asked you this already, I apologize, but did you ever talk to anybody from Summit about an alternate route?
No, just with the pre-file testimony, which I don't know if we can even do.
Okay. How far away would the closest emergency response personnel be?
We have a volunteer fire rescue department in Lawton, Iowa, which is probably about 6 miles. We are rather close to about maybe 8 miles to the fire station in Sioux City.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's all the questions I have.
Ms. Colas.
Good morning, Ms. Wilson. I'm so sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
Do you have a tenant that's currently farming this land, or does your brother?
We have a tenant.
Is he concerned about the proposed construction of the, about the proposed pipeline?
He is.
What are his concerns?
Just where they're going to lay it. How deep is it going to be? Is it going to impact his harvest or planting time and everything? It's just like everything is just like rush. And it's just, we don't know what's going on. We feel that it's not a public utility at all. And there shouldn't be a permit granted.
You mentioned that you had a gas line on there. Can you bring that up again? KMC? Matt? Can you show me that where that is again, please?
It runs like in this area here. Like I said, I just have what's from Northern Natural Gas. But they run really close together along parallel to here. But like I said, it does turn off that bottom one about where this tree line is. And then the other one keeps going straight up, following parallel with the proposed pipeline.
Now, you mentioned that your brother might be living in the homestead.
He is.
What's the proximity or dimensions to the homestead from this proposed pipeline? Could you measure,
Objection.
please?
State the objection.
This is asked and answered.
Ms. Colas.
Could you please measure the distance from the homestead that her brother wants to live in to the proposed pipeline?
I believe you already stated the distance. Did you not?
Something was said to be about 410 feet. And I know the farm across from us is about 980 feet. And then there's two other ones, like at the very bottom, right here. They're on top of the hill. You can't tell, but they're on top of the hill. We're at the bottom, and then there's another hill up here. This one here is probably about 1,400 feet. So all three of those, plus this one up here, who has cattle that grazes right next to the pipeline here, we would all be affected if we had that 1,600-foot plume.
The proposed pipeline, does it go through two parcels? I'm trying to get the distance.
Originally, it was 3 parcels that came across with the mailings. Then for some reason they did this northern parcel, and the southern parcel is one. And then this one here was another one. So like, I believe this northern one, the southern ones were number 0150, and then the one in the middle was 0151, unless it's backwards.
Does your tenant have concern about access to the farmland if this pipeline is being built or under construction?
The access point is at this entry point right here. He probably could go down here, but his equipment's going to be too wide for our lane. So that's the only other access that he would have. And that's where he would pull in the semi to load, but he would just go in enough and then back out during harvest.
How long have you owned this land?
At least since 1939. It'll be, I don't know what year we actually claimed it, but I'm like 5th generation.
What does your, does your brother farm this, or does your tenant farm the area impacted by the pipeline?
The tenant does at this time.
Has he raised concerns about the construction of this pipeline?
We haven't talked a lot about the construction, but I know even with one of the material documents that they showed at the informational meeting and in their PowerPoint, they say they're going to put the topsoil in one area and then put the other soil on the other side. That isn't depicted in that picture. And it was even brought out, questioned Mr. Powell at the Sioux Falls informational meeting, because I went there as well. And Mr. Powell's response was, "Oh, I don't know. That's the picture they gave us."
Do you think this is a public necessity or convenience?
Objection, Your Honor. Excuse me.
Go ahead, state the objection, sorry.
This is addressed extensively in the direct testimony. Asked and answered.
Ms. Colas?
Okay, well, let me see. Did you ever offer an alternate route?
Objection, Your Honor. This was asked by Mr. Taylor and discussed by the witness, including her belief that it may not be possible due to the existence of the northern natural gas lines.
Ms. Taylor?
Do you have
Sorry, Ms. Colas?
Do you have any other concerns related to safety if your brother lives on the future property?
Because of how it's at the valley, I think it was attachment 24 maybe. I was trying to do some views from the north to the south, south to the north, to show how it's really hilly at this point. It's at the bottom of the hill. So there is safety concerns for that, the neighbors, the cattle, as well as for the well and everything. But even with the emergency response, you know, we're not even able to know what they're going to be provided. Yes, they're supposed to be doing some training. That's great. I mean, my son-in-law is a firefighter, volunteer firefighter, and they've never received any training or anything. And of course, that's in South Dakota. But his response was, "Oh no." That's all that he would say. As soon as I said it was hazardous CO2 pipeline, he said, "Oh no."
What other concerns do you have if this pipeline is installed on your land?
Objection, Your Honor.
State the objection.
This pre-filed testimony is dozens of pages discussing this witness's concerns. This is not a cross-examination question, and it's asked and answered.
Ms. Colas?
Is there any other issues you want to bring up that were not addressed in your pre-filed testimony?
Same objection.
Ms. Colas? You can reply to his objections. I'm not trying to put you on the spot.
What do you mean?
So, Summit has objected to your question. You may push back on that objection or move on.
Why does he object? Explain it to me, please.
Can you restate your objection, please?
I can. My objection was that this question asks a general question for the witness to list her concerns about the pipeline. That is extensively discussed in the direct pre-filed testimony and is therefore asked and answered. I also object to the follow-up question, which I believe was something like, can you state any other concerns you might have, because it's not a cross-examination question and is answered in the direct testimony.
I do not have access to that information, and that is why I'm asking her. I think she has a right to voice her concerns or her issues.
So, Ms. Colas, this has been filed since, hold on here, July 21st in the docket. And so, and I'm not taking Summit's side, I'm just explaining their point is the pre-filed testimony has already been submitted and reviewed. The board has reviewed it. So open-ended questions and repeating something that has already been pre-filed is beyond the purpose of this exercise here. The exercise here is very tight, clarifying questions of testimony that was already pre-filed.
So my question is, as an intervener, how do I access that information so I can have those questions before someone comes up to testify?
It is all in the EFS system.
Okay, I guess no further questions.
Thank you. Ms. Hike.
Hello, Ms. Wilson. I'm Chris Hike. I'm a landowner as well. Just a question, you said your brother moving in on the property, does he have any plans of making any changes or building anything or anything in that area?
There is a building that he's planning on putting up on the farm itself, but not on the land.
Okay, and also, are there any tile on your land?
There's no tile on this land. It's a no-till farm.
Thank you.
Ms. Gruenhagen.
Thank you, yeah. Hi, Ms. Wilson. I just have a couple of very quick follow-up questions. My name is Chris Gruenhagen. I'm with the Iowa Farm Bureau. Did you receive copies of the Exhibit H's back in July?
That's probably what I received.
You mentioned you have a farm tenant on there. Are you aware that Exhibit H does not list a farm tenant?
Correct.
Okay. Did Summit ever ask you if you had a farm tenant?
I did give that name to Tanner at the very beginning.
Okay, so you did provide that information to Summit?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
But just like with everything else, everything's just been a muck. I mean, they can't get anything right, and they say they have this experience for hazardous CO2 pipeline, and it's not there. That's why there's no trust in this at all.
Thank you. No further questions.
Okay, with no, I don't think there's questions. We've got a lot of placards up and mics on, so just double checking. Okay, with no further, it's okay. With no further questions from the parties, then Mr. Jorde for redirect.
Thank you. Could we pull up her pre-filed testimony, please, page 247? And ma'am, while they're doing that, that's attachment 22, that in your pre-filed testimony, you had discussed a potential alternative route, but now we've got this northern natural gas information. And so I just want to make sure the record's clear. Are you standing by the suggestion of a potential alternative route as found on page 247 of your pre-filed testimony, or are you wishing to rescind or clarify that?
I would like to have it rescinded because the proposed one is going to go underneath both lines, because that would be up between Summit and Northern Natural Gas for approval.
Okay, and when you, I think in response to Mr. Taylor's questions, when you were recounting that Northern Natural Gas had a 100-foot setback for any other hazardous pipeline from its existing pipelines on your property, and that Northern Natural Gas had approval rights, did a Northern Natural Gas employee tell you that?
Yes, I spoke with two individuals. One of them was from the right-of-way department.
With Northern Natural Gas?
Correct.
Okay. Now, I'm sure you've heard testimony throughout this that Summit says they can go underneath the Northern Natural Gas lines if necessary. Are you aware of that?
I've heard that, but with the information I've been provided, they wouldn't be able to cross the lines.
Okay. And was that conversation, how recent in time was that?
Last week.
Okay.
Sorry.
Do you recall the name of the persons you talked to?
I do have those written down, but I don't know if I want to
Okay.
provide that here. I can give that to you personally.
Sure. And so then, just to be clear, before we leave this, forget for a moment what Northern Natural Gas told you. Let's pretend that the route, I mean, if it had to, well, I shouldn't even use the word had, but if it was approved to impede your property, would the suggested route still be the route that you would suggest, or would you have a different suggestion?
I think we would probably want to talk about it because with this blue circle and this blue circle, those are dams. And this is that tree as well. So I didn't have a legend on there to let you know what those were.
Okay, so you have two blue circles again on page 247 of your pre-filed testimony, and the blue circles are on your western north-south property line, one towards the southwest corner and then one towards the middle. And when you say dams, are those active dams that function year to year?
Yes.
And what's the concern about the proximity of those dams to the potential pipeline location?
Just in case there's a rupture and everything.
To keep it away from flowing water.
Right.
And then you've got a green circle near the acreage there, kind of in the lower middle section. And what did that represent?
That was, I mentioned the PFT about the tree that's really close to the line, the natural gas line, because when the tenant was taking the rest of the trees out, he was there and said, don't touch that one. So,
But
yeah.
So to be clear, though, the significance of the green circle is what indicating where you believe the northern natural gas line might be?
It's near there, yeah.
All right. And just that you don't believe any heavy equipment or work should be done in that area?
Correct. And then the red circle right up here is the farm tap. I don't know how to explain that, but that's why I'd have to walk out with that board with the bike flag, and read the meter.
So you actually have an above ground meter there?
Correct.
I see. Okay. But you wouldn't want the pipeline closer to your brother's home, would you, if it was located on your property?
No.
And
I think even if you put it anywhere in the property, it's not going to benefit for the safety reason just because of the terrain right there with the hill and being at the bottom of the hill. And if there was a rupture, that would all settle right there.
all right, very well. So the survey, the archaeological survey, if that occurred, it would have occurred against your will and you weren't provided any results if it did take place, correct?
Correct.
And that would be the same as to any survey you didn't give permission, so if they occurred, it had been against your will.
Correct.
And then I believe you stated the contact report was wrong, and then the surveys lied to you when confronted, right?
Right.
All right. And that didn't give you much confidence in doing business with this company, did it?
No. And even the day before my mom passed, I had to get somebody off our farmland. I had to leave her side just to go tell them to leave. Shouldn't have to do that. Not at all. No one should have to. My mom's important, so is the fund.
Thank you, ma'am. I don't have anything further.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson. You're excused. Mr. Jorde, your next witness.
Yes, Dr. Jeffrey Colvin, who should be joining us virtually, I hope.